So welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. So just a quick word about our sponsors going forward. Obviously, we're sponsored, have been for a long time by Goku Projects, the trail running caps. Go check them out. Also, we're sponsored by Phoenix, however you pronounce it. Choose your way to pronounce it. We're sponsored by those head torches, so discount codes are around. And also, we are proudly sponsored by Home Trails. So obviously, you'll know that Home Trails is the series on YouTube for where I go and interview trail runners in their home environments and on the trails, and sit down interview out on the trails. But we're also turning it into a bit of a brand. So going forward, you're going to be hearing more about Home Trails. So we'll be organising social runs in and around the Midlands and the Peak District specifically, possibly some merchandise coming out, some hats and some t-shirts and stuff, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Okay, duties are done, on with the show. Okay, welcome to the Ultra Running Sam podcast. So something a little bit different this week. So we have on Will Roberts is coming on the podcast shortly. Now, I know I've interviewed Will quite a few times with the spine race, but we thought it was only fair to sort of give him a fair crack at the whip of just talking about what he does as a professional. So I know selfishly I normally get him on to just talk about the spine race and everything, and while that's great content for all you spine lovers out there, and you can turn it off now if you don't like the spine race, because we will talk about it anyway. But I just thought that we'd do this episode as kind of like behind the scenes, sort of in the sort of inside, I'm trying to think the term for it, sort of industry insiders kind of thing. I don't know, maybe it'll turn into a theme, maybe not. But anyway, we're going to have a chat with Will and talk about what he does for a living, as well as being associated with the Beyond the Ultimate race series in Kenya, not in Kenya, all over the world. Recently been to Kenya, and also the spine race and what else he does. I think he's sort of branching out, so we'll chat to him about what he's been up to and what he plans to get up to. So, shall into the breakout room shortly.
They do, apparently.
Okay, so we are recording. Let's say we've stopped all the pre-recording chatter because there was too much of it, and we've hit go. We've hit the go button. We are recording. So welcome to returning guest Will Roberts.
Hello. It's nice to be back. Yeah, and thanks for actually stopping us and pressing record, because I think we just would have chatted away for an hour and wasted all the good stuff. So yeah.
So I was going to say, you are a returning guest, and you are probably, is this like the third time or fourth time you've been on the podcast in some description? It might be the fourth time. I think you may have now.
Really?
I think you may have overtaken Damien Hall as the most featured interviewee, or part of, because you've been on for like when we've done like the sort of spine chats, but it's not specifically been you on your own. It's been sort of a group of people sort of thing. So yeah, you're most welcome back, mate.
Oh, well, nice one. And I'll be sure to message Damo about that as well if I have taken his record. That'll be great.
Oh, no, don't take any more of his achievements away from him.
God. All right, moving on.
We'll leave it then. Right, so normally, and we are going to talk about the spine race. There's no way that we can sit here on Zoom recording and not talk about that great race that we both love. But so what we were thinking was that for people that don't really sort of know everything there is to know about Will Roberts, so you sort of come on and I sort of pick your brains about the spine race, and we have a chat about things to do with that. I know we've spoken briefly before about Beyond the Ultimate and that kind of thing, but we've never really dived into your sort of your background and what you actually do now, as far as Because you're not just your average photographer, are you? You are, I suppose you would class yourself as like an extreme environment photographer. Would you say that that's true?
I guess, yeah. It's a difficult one to define. It really, really is. When people ask me what my job is, uh, I never know what to tell them or what bit to lead with or anything else. But yeah, yeah, I guess the creative thing I do that I'm most passionate about is probably the photography. In that I'll do that in my spare time, whether somebody's employing me to do that or not, because I just love it. And I have ended up working in quite a lot of extreme environments. But honestly, Sam, it all just feels like an accident. Like I didn't necessarily mean to end up being a wilderness photographer or a guy that makes content about ultra marathons, but yeah, I feel like I've just fallen into a natural will-shaped hole somehow, which is just awesome. Yeah.
What did you sort of, because obviously we've chatted before, haven't we, about your sort of route into photography and stuff. But where did you think you were going to end up? Sort of once you went down the rabbit hole of media and photography. What did you sort of envision for your career, and how different is it?
How long an episode are we recording here? Because like, where do you want me to go back to? I've got galloping ADHD, so there's about 8 different careers I could line up for you here. But I guess where I am now sort of started. Oh, it would have been almost exactly 10 years ago, just a bit more. I ended up going out to East Africa and spending a year in Southwest Uganda for a lot of it, and then 6 months in Zanzibar, working for little NGOs and ending up falling into sort of being an unofficial photographer and helping out with their content marketing and doing videos and stuff. That, you know what, I'm not going to send you a link because it's embarrassingly bad, but there's a couple of like fake newscasts that I did from Uganda back in those days. And it was just that I was the biggest nerd on site. Like I was the only one geeky enough out in that environment to know one end of a camera from the other and to be happy to spend days at a time just sat editing video and getting it just right. And just found that I loved it. Ended up coming back and doing a journalism qualification, but then deciding that journalism wasn't really for me. I'm not up for knocking on people's doors after some tragedies happened and grilling them about it. That never felt right. And then somehow ended up working with Beyond the Ultimate via a very long, convoluted series of events that we'll probably put that just behind where this story starts. Um, and yeah, that was a complete accident, and I loved it from the very first second I heard ultramarathon and asked what the hell that means. And that's honestly true. We're going back probably 8, 9 years now since I first encountered Chris King and the guys at Beyond the Ultimate. And the first thing I had to ask is, what is an ultramarathon? I had no idea. I didn't know there were people out there running further than 26 miles. That in itself seemed as ludicrous as you could possibly be. And Chris and the guys at BTU just opened up this whole other world for me. And there's an argument there that I may then have overstated my skills in order to get a couple of gigs with them, working out in the amazing locations they work in. And then I had to learn very, very quickly. And yeah, ended up doing what I'm doing now, which just seems that is just like a chance meeting one day 8 or 9 years ago. And now I'm the bald guy from the spine race. It's balmy to me every time I turn up in Edale, but I love it. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. So how did you get in touch with Chris then? I don't know whether we've spoken about this before then. How did you sort of cross paths, and how did that sort of come about?
Yeah, this is weird, isn't it? Because me and you have spoken outside the podcast a fair few times as well. Like we've worked together on the spine, but you don't really get a lot of time to just chat about your past and stuff. So no reason why you'd have heard this before, but I was already working in the building where Beyond the Ultimate ended up working. So I was working with the big events company that were already there. I was a site controller for urban abseiling events, large scale bungee events. I'd been around the Middle East and a few other places setting up and running bungee operations for them.
Right. Never knew that.
I'd been doing, yeah. There was a period between like 2010 and about 2013 where I'd have been, as a lead instructor, I'd have pushed about 10,000 people a year off very, very high things. That's what I was doing every weekend, somewhere else around the country or somewhere else in the world. And then one day, suddenly Beyond the Ultimates moving into the offices and becoming part of the group of companies that we were at the time. And Chris King just wanders in on a November morning in his tiny little short shorts as he wears perpetually. And I had no idea who on earth he was. This guy just walking in like he owns the place. Um, and yeah, we got chatting, and honestly, it feels like we got chatting, and a week later, I was in Peru. There's obviously 6 months between that, but I just, I fell in love with it. Everything he had to tell me about that world just really, really excited me, and that's never really stopped. Like I call myself on the spine race the arch dot watcher. You know, what I am is the person following the events most closely and trying to communicate that information out as fast as I can, because I'd be there anyway. I'd be there fixed to that tracker and watching everything that was happening anyway. It's just fortunate that people are willing to have me actually be on site and talk about it in person and take photos of them and stuff. Yeah, so I'm living the dream, really.
Chief dot watcher.
Yeah.
So I was speaking to a mate of mine about sort of after the spine, after I did it in January, and he was just, and I'd not quite realised how. I mean, I follow the race, whether I'm like doing media stuff for you and stuff, or whether I'm just watching, the summer race from afar. I'll be glued to the trackers, and I hadn't quite realised how seriously people take dot watching, to the point where it's like it seems like its own sport in itself, that people watch the dots so
Yeah.
much. And he was sort of saying to me that in the summer. I saw him around just after I did this sprint in the summer, and I just, like, a week later I was chatting to him, and he was like, "Oh, yeah, how did you get on?" We had a chat and stuff, and then he says, "Oh, my runners out of the spine." I was like, "What do you mean, my runners?" He says, "Oh, well, the one that I picked out of the hat," and what he'd been doing with his he's got a few brothers, and they all go out drinking every week, this group of lads. What they'd done was they'd put all the names of everyone in the summer spine race into a hat, and then they'd all drawn a name out, and whoever they drew out, that was their person to follow for the week.
I love it. That is absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
Crazy, isn't it?
I, yeah, it is. And I've sort of stopped being surprised by it as much now. I've seen it enough times, but I couldn't believe it year on year as I started working with the spine race, just how many people were involved and how many people were, like, I'd start going into Twitter and realizing I'm seeing a few names over and over again, and they are literally staying with us for the whole week, and talking about not getting anything done at the office. And they've always got a couple of tabs open with the trackers on, and, how are you supposed to get anything done? And every now and then people will start spontaneously sharing their tracking setup, like their dot watching den, and they'll have three screens in front of them and two cups of coffee on the go, maybe in a spine mug. And I absolutely love it. We've yeah, we've opened up a window into what was already happening there at the spine race. And I always loved it, and I always figured that other people should be watching this as well, because I was amazed by what the athletes were doing out there. And the more we put out there, the more people seem to want. And
Yeah,
it's an incredible experience. Um,
crazy. Because I suppose actually, initially it was trackers was just like a safety thing, wasn't it? Obviously, to begin with, and it's its own thing, its own little entity, hasn't it? That people like view it as like a thing that they've got to do. They feel compelled to do it all week and just watch everyone, rather than it being like, just, my brother or my dad or my sister or my mate is doing this race. I'll just see where they are. Now it's like a thing that people obsessively do, isn't it?
yeah, and I'm straight away here going to thank James Thurlow at the guy and the guys at Open Tracking for that. I mean, I love James anyway; he's a lovely bloke, but the tracking system that they've put together, the sort of user interface bit of it is so good. You can get so much information from it, and the more you dig into it, the more you can find. And I just think what they've built there is sort of uniquely brilliant. So as much as I love what I do in like the social media coverage side of it, and the sort of team I've ended up gathering together around me, and how hard they work, and all the amazing photos and videos that we put out, that's great. But right in the middle is that tracking system. As you've said, you know, they're dot watchers. They love those dots, and he's built a great system there. It's the two things have really converged and grown
Yeah,
together at the Spine Race. They're like the tracking system. We couldn't do what we do as effectively without it at all, because you have
yeah,
got something live 24 hours a day. It's absolutely brilliant. Now there's two-way comms there as well, where you can actually send messages to the people out there on the course, and yeah, it's great what they've done. So yeah, hi James, and thank you. Thank you for making me look good for the last few years. That's been really useful.
it is the most useful thing, isn't it, when you are working on, I mean, for the race anyway, but for working on the media team, just being able to know that if you've got signal, if you're fortunate to be in an area where you've got signal, you know that if you're waiting for a runner and you've got your camera ready, that you can look on the tracker and you can see exactly where they are, you know, within a few minutes, and you can sort of plan your, which is something I always I always sort of like, amazed me when I came to the Spine first to sort of help out you guys, was that obviously people, I just assumed that everybody would go to bed at night and get up in the morning and see what was going on naively. Obviously that doesn't happen. Everybody's basically awake for 24 hours a day for 7 days straight, and you try and sleep at intervals when nothing is happening on the tracker. So you can see, and it's amazing how you can figure out, and you learn to do this, don't you? You look at the map and you know that, oh, once they get to that farm, you know that they're still 4 hours away from this point, and you know that you can, you know, effectively you could go and have a sleep for 3 hours, or, you know, not that anyone, especially you, gets 3 hours sleep at any point. You can read the tracker and you know where people are, and you don't get surprised by things, do you?
No,
And sort of
or
plan.
rarely anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, you can
I
plan.
imagine it like the war room in a World War II film, like you pushing all the little things around on the map. Like that's what I'm picturing in my head when I'm looking at the tracking system. And it's got to the point now where I can like read the matrix. Like I can look at the map and I'll go, right, okay, I'm going to get that video edited in this space. Then I'm going to interview that person. Then there's going to be a gap, right? I can fit in a shower there. I'll have a meal in this gap, and there might be a 2 hour sleep a bit later on at like 6 p.m. And I can see my day lining up ahead of me across the tracking system. Yeah, we'd be lost without it. So with the runners, obviously, but yeah.
Literally, yeah.
Yeah. Or at least we'd have lost them. Yeah.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, it's invaluable. Yeah, big
Mm.
shout out to Open Tracking. Sort of going back to your comment of sort of overstating your abilities to be able to get a bit of work with Beyond the
I,
Ultimate
I
sort
was hoping I'd slip that one under the radar a bit. Chris might be listening to this.
Well, as soon as I heard that, firstly, it reminded me of how I got onto the Spy Media team by sort of blagging my way on. But it also, I was listening to a podcast, so I'm going to give a shout out to another podcast here called Second Nature. So if you haven't heard of Second Nature, it is a podcast by Dylan Bowman, in the US. Obviously, he's famous for
Cool.
ultra runner and free trail, but he's got a podcast with, I think he used to be, so this guy called Aaron Lutz, and he used to be his manager when he was at Red Bull. He used to work at Red Bull. But together they've got this podcast about behind the scenes of outdoor brands. So they get people on and chat to them and stuff. And they got somebody on, I can't remember what it was in reference to, but he was sort of talking about this area of sort of blagging your way into a job sort of thing, by like overstating your abilities, or just, you know, pulling a fast one, and he was saying that this guy was saying how he read a book about David Geffen, so Geffen Records
Yeah.
in the US, and how he sort of rose to fame. And basically, I'm going to bore everybody with this story now, but it's made me want to read the book about him anyway. That he wanted a job at this publishing company. I can't remember what it was, but basically got turned away. Said you can't even work in the mailroom unless you've got like a university degree or something. So he went away and thought about what he was going to do, and he basically came back and said, "Okay, yeah, I've been to university. I've got a degree." And they go, "Okay, well, what university was it?" It was like, well, like Stanford. And they're like, "Okay, you can start in the mailroom, but we'll obviously need you to sort of prove that you've got all your, and we need a letter of recommendation from Stanford." And he's like, "No problem. Yeah, they'll send it through." Um, so so what he did was, because he was in the mailroom, he knew that the mail would come in, would intercept it. So he started working in the mailroom, intercepted this letter, which would have been not a letter of recommendation, it would have been like a letter of, this guy doesn't exist, we don't know who he is. And he took the letter, got a printer to copy the letterhead, then wrote like a really a glowing like resume sort of thing for himself of how good he was and how much Stanford University like recommended him for this job, resealed it, and then gave it to them. And they were like, "Wow, this is brilliant." And that's how he got his foot in the door in like this publishing place. And
That's
obviously
amazing.
went on to be like obviously like a multi-million billionaire, whatever he is. And the presenter was saying it reminded him of a quote from the Wu-Tang, which if it was Method Man or if it was ODB, I can't remember what it was, that said, "Behind every fortune is a crime." So just think about that. So he sort of applied it to like a career. If you've like built this amazing for yourself, how sometimes we have to sort
Yeah.
of like sometimes we have to make our own story basically to get there, which is a long-winded way of sort of talking about how you sort of blagged your way into the Beyond the Ultimate team.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know if the way I did it was quite as overtly criminal, but with me, it was more sort of right place, right time. It was for the Jungle Ultra. I can't remember if it was 2015 or 2016. And with like 3, 4 weeks to go, the actual videographer that was meant to be going just ghosted, just gone, just not happening. And I was asked if I'd be up to doing it. And I just said yes and figured I would learn how to do it on the fly as we went. Like I figured I had just enough knowledge and skill to get started, and the rest of it I would figure out as I went. And it was very Dunning-Kruger of me. I didn't realize how much I didn't know until I got into that environment all of a sudden. And I'm not now just being a videographer, which I haven't really done before on this scale. I'm now doing it in a place where it's 35 degrees, it's 100% humidity. There's nowhere to charge any of your equipment. Like there's almost no contact across the entire course. So I was learning how to operate in a completely wild environment, cut off from the rest of the world, and learning how to do this job of being a videographer all at the same time. Yeah, I think it's one of those few occasions where I'm sort of glad that I had ADHD, because I just span a lot of plates for a long time and until the job was done. And yeah, here we are. So yeah, I just kind of brute forced my way through it in the end, but it was that learning curve was steep. There's a video out there somewhere on YouTube of me 4 days into the race talking about how stupid the jungle is and how anybody who goes into the jungle is just asking for whatever they get. And like screaming at the camera going, "I've got sand in my pants, my camera's broken, like we're still 20 kilometers from where we're supposed to be." Like it was a lot. And I'm a man with big feelings, so yeah. It's all out there on YouTube if you want it. But
We'll go in search of it. Yeah, ADHD seems to be a superpower for media, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, it depends. During the spine race, it absolutely is. It's the only way I get through 8 days of it doing as much as I am, and with that constantly evolving and moving to-do list. And on a day-to-day basis, I have to really concentrate to maintain anything like a normal sleeping pattern. At the spine, it's almost a relief to just take all the wheels off from trying to be a normal person, to just pull the chocks away and know that I am just going to have to go in hell for leather for 8 days and just go until it's done. And I kind of love being able to just throw myself in it completely. But then there's the other side of having ADHD and being in media, which is I'm talking to you without my podcasting mic because it's just not in the stand. And I don't know where me of the past thought was a good idea to put it. And it could be anywhere in any one of the exploded bags of kit here around my office around me. So, yeah, it's not even organized chaos. It's just chaos 7 days a week. And there are a few times a year when I'm out on these events where, for some reason, my weird loose wiring is perfectly suited to being in that environment. So, yeah.
Um, on a serious note, then, I've seen it firsthand how you sort of survive Spine Week. How does it actually take a physical toll on you to sort of be operating at 100 miles an hour, 27 hours a day?
Um, I guess there's a couple of things to say there, which is I'm getting better at it. So I am less sort of I'm less inclined these days to work myself quite as hard as I used to. I will at least try and get some sleep in a 24-hour period whenever I can these days. Um, uh, and a part of that is just having gathered such a good team of people around me. Sort of the people that I work with regularly on the media team have just grown and grown and grown event on event, and it's meant that I've been more able to be less sort of suicidally hardworking during these events. Because if you go back a bunch of years, there's one event in particular where I just did so much over the first weekend that I arrived in Kirkyetum, walked into the bar there, and immediately blacked out, fell through a table, knocked everything everywhere. The medics had to come and look after me. It was really embarrassing. Like I just went too far, and I had to learn some lessons from that. So as much as I say I just take the brakes off completely and let myself go nuts out there, I've had to realize that I can't just take the brakes off completely. Like there has to be some control, and I'm getting better at that. But also, you know what it's like behind the scenes on the spine. If I'm sitting there and my mug is empty, somebody will put a cup of tea in it. If people in the checkpoints realize I haven't eaten for a while, they will make a beeline for me and put food in front of me within reaching distance so I don't have to go anywhere or think about it. And I'm immensely, immensely grateful for how supportive the people around me have been over the years, because yeah, as much as I'm getting better at it, I think I couldn't do what I do without the support system that's there. And you know, you've got me started on the spine now, and I can't help but I'm so emotionally attached to it for that very reason. Like, people see what the runners need and they will bend over backwards to do that, and they will bend over backwards to help each other out behind the scenes as well. And when they see me and they realize that I've been sat at the same laptop now for the last 20 hours, and they've done a shift, gone to bed, come back, and I'm still sat there, they will just silently appear like angels and make sure that I've at least got food and that I'm drinking liquids and all those other bang normal human things that people are supposed to do. Yeah, so a bit of both. I'm getting better, but also I'm in the perfect environment to be as bonkers as I am.
Yeah. The Spine family take up the slack, don't they?
Yeah, yeah, they're amazing. They really, really are. Yeah.
And I also I'm always impressed with how Adam Jacobs can sleep anywhere and under the table,
Yeah.
actually in that room at Yetum. I don't know how he does it, but he can just basically just like roll out a sleeping mat and just go to sleep under the table. Amazes me.
I've seen him loosely push three chairs together and just lay on them with his legs hanging off the end and zonk out for 3 hours. If he decides I need to sleep and I've only got this window to do it in, he'll just sleep. Like, he can just decide to. I've never seen anything like it. So yeah, Adam, who has, Adam's been working alongside me for a whole bunch of events now. I don't know if it's 6 or 7, maybe even 8 he's done in a row now. So yeah, couldn't do it without him either. Or Jamie or Dave or any of the other guys I work with regularly. They're all absolutely amazing. But yeah, how he does that, I do not know. He needs to make his own set of tutorial videos about how he does that because people would pay for that skill. He can sleep anywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and also you can sleep in a car out on the route as well. I've noted that as well, that you can just literally just get in your sleeping bag in like -10 and just go to sleep. And there's ice on the inside of the windows because of the condensation. So
Yeah, it's not unheard of for the safety team to go and check on him because they're genuinely worried about him. He's like, fine. I've got a big sleeping bag. I'm in my jammies. Like, why have you woken me up? And it's not a glamorous job, this. There's this kind of perception that if you work in these amazing wilderness environments, that you're probably working for Red Bull or the BBC or some big brand that's put a load of money behind you. And as rough as it looks, you're probably going to a nice hotel at night or whatever. It's like, no, this is the ultra running world. We don't have that. Like it doesn't work that way. So you might be sleeping in your car or just under a table or 3 chairs pushed together. Um, yeah, you make the best of what rest you can get when you can get it.
yeah, yeah. How does that sort of that role that you've got at the Spine? Obviously, you are the media team. You are the
Hmm.
Um, how does that sort of translate to when you go to do like the Beyond the Ultimate stuff? Are you still in that same role of like chief media guy and then sort of rolling out the jobs to everybody?
Well, no, not so much these days. I mean, if you go back to when I was working on every Beyond the Ultimate race, which is sort of pre-COVID, really, but I've still been there for the last couple of years, but less than I used to be. Um, Speaking of the sort of various careers I've had over the year, I'm also a part-time lecturer at Hallam University, and I've been doing more of that over the last couple of years, which pulled me away from Beyond the Ultimate a little. They've now got a guy called Cameron Wright, who is in there being the younger, more handsome, more talented version of me for Beyond the Ultimate. But I had the very good fortune to work alongside him in Kenya. So I only got back like 10 days ago now. And actually that was blissful. Like as hard work as it was, and as long as the days were, and as it's hot and dusty, and there's a lot of challenges out there as a photographer, but it's also photography Christmas, right? And I was out there and could just concentrate on being a photographer. And honestly, that it was a joy. I really, really enjoyed that. But if you go back pre-COVID, it often used to just be me and Chris. And it would basically be Chris as race director doing literally everything, and me doing anything that was involved in marketing or media or PR or social media comms or photography. And yeah, sometimes a videographer working alongside us as well, but quite often just the two of us. So they could be they could be just as backbreaking as events. But yeah, I've recently been able to have what felt in comparison just like a photographer's holiday, as hard as it was. So that was amazing. Yeah.
That, I'd noticed sort of this year Spine that I always get them mixed up because of the like summer and winter and everything. That you'd been taking more photos for yourself on film. That was like a little sort of mini. Did you feel like you've got the sort of the bandwidth now to be able to do stuff like that? So rather than being just solely focused on, oh, I've got a media, I can sort of have this sort of bit of a creative outlet for yourself during these jobs.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit. There was even not this summer, but the summer before. I even took a morning out at one point and just walked up to Hut 2 and spent some time up there with the team and with the runners and grabbed some amazing photos and had some time out on the hill. Because I think it's important to sort of realize here that it's the likes of Adam Jacobs and Jamie Rutherford and David Wood and Jack Mather and Andy Hendry and like all the other guys that have been on the media team over the year. Those are the guys that are up on the hill all day in whatever the weather. I'm generally knocking about wherever there is power and Wi-Fi and runners. So I'm going checkpoint to checkpoint. So it's unusual for me to find that I've actually got time to go and see any of the trail. Um, so don't get me wrong, that's not me complaining. I love what I do, but yeah, the last couple of years, as the teams got bigger and more multi-skilled themselves, I have been able to do a little bit of that, and I've loved it. Like grabbing some photos of John Bamber during the last race on a sort of 60-year-old camera was just absolutely brilliant, and something I got to do just because suddenly I had time on my hands. So yeah, that's been wonderful. But yeah, now as a response to that, I seem to be making lots of plans for how we're going to do the media going forwards. That'll include me being really busy again, but we'll see.
Awesome. So with the sort of experience that you've got now with going to these extreme environments, so obviously, I know, thinking about an extreme environment, you automatically, I think of you going over to like Africa and doing these hot races and jungle races and things like that, those kind of extreme environments. But actually, the it seems like every environment you work in is extreme, because the spine race is an extreme environment as well at times. Even if
Yeah.
if you're not on the hill all the time, it's not an ideal scenario, is it, for making good content when you've got the worst weather that Britain can send at you. What sort of How is that your experience of all these different changing environments? How has that sort of informed how you approach race media and photography as the years have gone on, as you've got those experiences?
Wow. Yeah, good question. Yeah, I should have more of an answer to that. I don't know if I mentioned before about the bags and bags of exploded kit all around me in my attic slash office up here, but over the years, I've just collected a lot of bits and bobs. So I'm now in the very lucky position of, if somebody tells me where I'm going to be and how long for, I can look at the weather conditions and do a little bit of reading and go and pick the bits that I'm likely to need out of the mess up here, which is great. But that's something that's happened over a lot of years. But it'd be easy to think that I'm like a really confident traveler because of the amount of travel that I've done, but I'm not. I'm actually quite an anxious traveler. So I try and have a backup system for everything. You know, there are at least three versions of every cable in my kit. There are enough spare batteries that I could go for a couple of days without having to plug anything in. More if I'm working in somewhere like Namibia, where we can, you know, you can go 3, 4 days on the bounce without really getting access to power properly. You know, I've got a tripod plus a smaller tripod just in case, and then maybe even a tiny little tripod just in case, just in case. Like I've had enough things go wrong on events over the years that I do tend to have spare bits and bobs. But you know, that's not a budget friendly way of working. Things get quite expensive, but I'm also not fussy. So like my cameras are great and they do the job, but they're not new. I don't pick up the fanciest kit. There's no point. I'm going to lose the lens caps. I'm going to scratch a lens. I'm going to lose batteries or drop a charger somewhere. It's going to get knocked out of a vehicle onto the ground. And I know that over the course of like a 5 day event with Beyond the Ultimate or a 8 or 9 day event with the Spine Race, my kit's just going to get knocked about all over the place and in and out of horrible conditions. So I'm just not that fussy about it. I don't have the fanciest mics and cameras and stuff because I've had to get used to seeing them as um, I don't want to say expendable because I'm very emotionally attached to my kit and I don't want my cameras to hear me describe them that way. But yeah, you know, any one of them is on a knife edge. Any one of them could just get knocked off a table and smashed to bits halfway through an event. So yeah, I have a lot of good enough kit and a lot of spares for whatever scenario I might get into. But yeah, that's the only way I've found to do it really.
Yeah, as you were saying that, I realised I think I've still got one of your lens caps somehow. I don't know how I ended up with it,
Oh,
but
everyone has, mate. Everyone has. I imagine anyone who's worked with me over the years will have at least one of my charging cables, a couple of batteries. Classically, I leave my tripod with Jamie Rutherford after almost every event, and he then has to deliver it back to me. I don't know why or how. The last time I did it, neither of us recall him even needing it, but he somehow had it at the end of the event. Yeah,
Good.
but there you go.
What's speaking of these different environments, then, what is your favorite if you could sort of pick, if you can pick, out of all the environments you work in, like the really cold and wet
Yeah.
UK for the spine, there's the really cold for with the Arctic spine, and then obviously you've got the jungle and the desert and everything. What has sort of been, do you have a favorite environment that you look forward to going to as far as like shooting goes?
I mean, there's great stuff about all those places you've just said. The jungle is the hardest to shoot in, I'd say. Narrow that with the Arctic for very different reasons, but like everything in the jungle wants you dead and wants to kill all your electrical equipment. Like it's 100% humidity. It's never going to be lower than 90 for the whole time that you're out there. When it rains, it's like a lake falling out of the sky above you, and it can go on for hours. Like it is such a difficult environment to work in, and it's dark in there all of the time when you're under thick canopy. It's a really, really difficult environment to shoot, and a really difficult environment to just exist in and use your cameras in. So like hats off to anybody that's regularly working in a jungle environment. It's been a couple of years since I've been back. That's become Adam Jacobs' job now with Beyond the Ultimate. Um, but yeah, did love that. Probably the hardest one to do, but I love the Arctic. I love it, man. It's just like the one claim to being a decent ultra runner I have is having done BTU's 5-day race up in Arctic Sweden. And now the spine race has got an even longer, even tougher race just a little bit further north in Sweden as well. So somehow my life has ended up gravitating back into that area again. And I've just loved every time that I've been over there. I guess looking at it from the outside, you'd think like, how exciting can that be for a photographer? Everything's just white. It's just snow everywhere. And it just absolutely isn't. What that means is everywhere is a canvas for whatever is going on in the sky. And, the blue out there is bright electric blue at times. Like sunrises are rainbow colored. And if you happen to catch the northern lights right as well, the whole world just reflects that back up. And it's just utterly, utterly beautiful. So probably my favorite place as just to be in, just because I love it. But also as a photographer, it's just such an absolute pleasure to shoot out there. You've just got to be careful with your batteries because nothing lasts when it's that cold. And I managed to get frost nip on 3 of my fingers taking photos of the Northern Lights the last time I was over there. So you really do have to be careful. But yeah, just beautiful, beautiful place.
Mind you, you don't have to go to the Arctic Circle now to take photos of the Northern Lights. You can do it in Derbyshire.
I know, right? I not even that. I got a couple of really good Northern Light photos earlier this year out of my attic window, right here, just south of Barnsley. So yeah,
Same
absolutely
there.
insane. I couldn't believe it. But yeah, yeah,
What,
it doesn't quite beat seeing it up there
yeah,
in the
yeah.
snow.
I suppose there's a difference between seeing it with your own eyes, sort of with the naked eye, and then having to use your phone or your camera to be able to see it afterwards. Yeah, there is a bit of a difference with that.
Yeah, I got really lucky this February on the Arctic Spine. There was just one night in particular where it was just vividly visible, even with the naked eye. And there was the sort of videographer that I was working with, a Danish guy called Bjorn Sorensen, who's amazing. Trail Bear Films, you should definitely look him up. And it was just me and
Yeah.
him out in the snow at night in as much sort of cold weather gear as we could put on, darting about like 5-year-olds in a toy shop, just like, yeah, but have you shot that way? Oh yeah, but look that way. Look what's happening over there. And just we were like kids. It's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, yeah, lovely stuff. But that's where I got frost nip. So it's swings and roundabouts.
It's worth it for getting those shots, isn't it? Once
Yeah, yeah, it was.
um, where's your sort of, if you could pick anywhere in the world to go and shoot a race, have you got anywhere that would sort of be? I know you're a busy guy with the commitments you've got, but if you could go and shoot a race anywhere in the world, where would it be?
Oh man. You know what? I've never spent any time in the mountains. Not any proper mountains, really. So I think that'd have to be next on the list. Somewhere with some proper peaks. I mean, the closest I've really got was we go over the Andes when we go over to Peru for the jungle, but we're not really in the mountains once the race gets started. You see a lot of mountains from a distance, really, when you're in Sweden, but I'd love to be in amongst it. The closest I've really got was when I went to Zagama earlier this summer. That's a pretty lumpy course, and it just all it did was give me an appetite for spending some proper time out in the mountains, either just as a photographer or covering a race. So yeah, it'd have to be that. I don't know where in particular, but somewhere particularly lumpy.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mountains always look good, don't they, on a photo? Can't go wrong.
Yeah, and it's just like an environment I haven't really had any experience of. Like we'd have to see how it went though. I suck at altitude. I'd have to get used to that. We go to every time we go to the jungle, we go to Cusco, and that's like 3,400 meters. I can barely lift a pint. It's all I can do to climb the stairs to my hotel room. So I'd need some serious acclimatization, but yeah, I'd love to do it.
Amazing. So sort of bringing things back round again to the spine. Never too far away from the spine.
That's fine by me, mate.
we're we're only what are we now? We're September, nearly October, so we're only sort of 3 months removed from. Yeah, we are 3 months removed from the spine,
Oh,
aren't we?
jeez. Well, that shook me. How do they keep coming around this fast?
Yeah. I suppose when you've got one halfway through the year, then it's
Yeah,
sort of.
yeah, yeah.
What have you got any? Can you talk about what plans you've got for this year's race? Are you allowed to say anything, or is there anything that you can say that to get people excited for the
Well,
media?
look, I can't give too much away. And the rosters are public, right? So people, if they want to, they have a fair idea of who's entered into the race at the moment. In terms of the actual media coverage, yeah, I've got some plans. I've tweaked things a little bit, event to event, ever since I started doing it, sort of early in 2018. So yeah, you can expect a few tweaks between here and January. Maybe quite a few this time, but I really am gonna keep quiet about that. um, yeah.
Exciting.
So not reinventing the wheel. There's still going to be a tracker. There's still going to be all the stuff that we've currently got, but I've got some ideas for more and better that we can get done as well. But I think January is going to be an amazing race. Like what we've got is an amazing lineup of female athletes at the moment. So as far as I know, and Claire can correct me, but like there'll be Claire back and Hannah Rickman and Lucy Gossage. And there's been talk of just about every female runner of incredible distance events you can think of coming along in January. And it's just been wonderful. Like what I keep picking up on behind the scenes is all these women are just supporting each other and starting their own WhatsApp groups and getting ready to do recce's together and just really lifting each other through the experience. And I just think January could be incredibly exciting. And it's going to be the women's roster that's the one to watch in January, and that's going to be great. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But yeah, more to be revealed as the year goes on.
I'm
But
rooted.
you just never know. You never know who's going to drop into the race either, because a week or two out from the event, you never know who might phone Phil and suddenly end up on the roster. So yeah, watch this space, as it were.
I'll be rooting for Hannah. I think she's put the years in, hasn't she? And she keeps coming back, and I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
I know she's always on the podium, but it'd be great to see Hannah Rickman for the win. That'd be great. That'd be nice
Yeah,
one.
that's a tough field she's going to be up against. Like Lucy Gossage as well, who's sworn to me just a little while ago at the Lakeland 100 that she still doesn't really think of herself as an ultra runner. And, this is kind of something that she's knocking off for fun. She's outstanding. I mean, we've seen what she can do, and she's coming in now having been through it once already. So you know, Lord knows what she's really capable of in January. So yeah, January is going to be a really, really exciting race. I mean, it always is. I'm bound to say that, but I think that it's going to be the women's field in January that's going to be particularly exciting. And yeah, I'd love to see Hannah do well. I can't play favorites, but Hannah's just great, and I've really, really enjoyed her journey over the last few years. And as you say, she's getting stronger and stronger event on event. She learns and builds, and yeah, who knows? 2025 might be her winter.
Yeah. She's great, and I forgot actually. I had a memory came back to me that I'd kind of just forgotten for this year's winter spine. So we were going sort of, I'd put my foot down a little bit and was quite happy with the pace I was going, and it was that section that drops down to what's the reservoir that you drop down to, Torside. So that horrible hill that is all bog going down there, and it's really like nasty single track and really like so up and down, and got holes and bog and like massive puddles and stuff. And Hannah came up behind me, was running behind me. And she was like, I turned around and saw her come in, and she was like, "You all right?" And I was like, "Yeah, yeah, I'm fine." And just as she said that, I literally like tripped over and fell like on my back and slid, and actually pulled my hamstring. And I thought, "Oh no, what have I done? Is this my race over?" But and she stopped and made sure that I was okay. And I was like, just go, just leave me, I'll be fine." And
Leave me. It's not worth it. Yeah.
and I was fine. But yeah, she was quite willing to sort of put her race to one side to try and help me. But I was like, no, no, forget me. You go and chase Claire. Go, go, go. Yeah,
But
exciting.
I can't think of a lot of runners anywhere, like from the elites up at the front, the people at the back. I cannot think of off the top of my head any runners of the spine race over the years who wouldn't do that. Like as competitive as it's become and is increasingly becoming, you still always hear stories of that kind of thing having happened during the race. People who were just willing to stop and put some time into making sure that other person is okay. And it has to be that way, right? The nature of the spine race and of any of these sort of disgusting distance events is that you've got to be there to look out for each other. You know, if you see somebody in trouble, it's not the kind of environment where you can just sprint past them and laugh.
Yeah,
Like you really need to know they're okay before you leave somebody. And I can't think of anybody who's been egotistical enough over the years that I've been involved with the spine to just blast past somebody and leave them to it. Which is just amazing. I love that because I feel like again I've got into being a part of the most perfect sport for me. Like I was never into competitive sport when I was younger. I was crap at football, terrible at rugby. The only school team I actually got onto was the mixed hockey team at one point, but that was until Helen Gledor broke my thumb and I never played again. So shout out to Helen, who almost certainly doesn't remember me at all. But you know, I just wasn't into that kind of thing. And I don't think I could ever be as passionate about football and footballers or anything like that. I love the ultra running scene because they're just amazing people. Even if you took the outstanding superhuman performances that we get to see from time to time completely out of the equation, they'd still be amazing places to be and inspiring events to cover. And I love being able to tell the stories about the elite runners. You know, I've loved tracking Hannah Rickman's development over the last few years. Every time Claire Banwet's there, I'm excited. I'm a total stand for Claire. I love it when Damo's back and John Kelly's there and sort of all these sort of big names you associate with the race over the year. But the races, the guys at the front end, that's all sort of over and done with Tuesday and Wednesday. The events carry on until the end of the Saturday or even the next Sunday morning in a winter race. And I love those stories. I love each and every one of them. Everyone who gets to the finish line, and I've just some of the most brilliant things that have happened over the year on the spine race had absolutely nothing to do with the top end of the field.
yeah.
It's almost two separate events in that sense. Yeah, love
It's
it.
one of the things that sort of I love about the race as well is that everybody is treated like a winner, aren't they? So regardless of, you know, whether you finish on the Wednesday or you finish on the Sunday, everybody gets that same attention, don't they, from the media team, that everybody gets cheered in as they come down the hill to the finish. Everybody gets photos of them touching the wall, kissing the wall, whatever they choose to do. And you always get an Instagram post or a Facebook post about you that sort of tells, especially if you've had an interesting story, like if your journey has been, you know, like an interesting one like mine where I fell over. And those sort of details that on any other race would sort of be forgotten, and they're the stories that you'd have to tell yourself, like to your friends and family and stuff. But the media team for the Spine like tells that story. It tells us the individual story of people, regardless of what position they come in, which is like mind blowing, isn't it? When you think of how many people are in those races over that period of time, it's no wonder you run ragged.
Yeah, but we feel. Yeah, I feel like I can speak for the other people I work with on the media team here when I say this. Like we feel compelled to do that. It's not it's not like I sat down one day and worked out a media policy and this is officially what we're going to do. Everybody that I've carried on working with and who comes back to the media team repeatedly is there because they basically slotted straight into feeling like it was as important as I do that we tell as many of these stories as we possibly can. And we can't do them all. We can't. We are only human. And we are getting better year on year at gathering and processing all of that information. But yeah, you can understand why there's often not as much sleep as there should be. Because it just never stops. And there are always more stories. And I could never hope to tell everybody everything that's gone on at this race. But that's the same for everybody involved in it as well. The experience of being on the safety team would be utterly different to being on the media team, to being on the checkpoint team, to being a runner. Everybody is seeing part of the full thing. And I kind of see it as my responsibility to show as much of it as I possibly can to the people out in the world who continue to blow my mind by being as interested in it as they are. I remember the first time a couple of years back, we topped like 1 million views over the events for the videos, and that was without counting up any of the interactions with the posts. And I just couldn't believe it. But people keep coming back and they keep wanting more. And I love these runners and I love those stories. And I hand on heart say that that's not shtick. I love these guys. I will cry at least half a dozen times over the course of a Spine race. I will do the full gamut of emotions over that event, and I will do as much as I possibly can to get those stories out. And you know, you mentioned before about trying to celebrate the people further down the course as much as the people who are winning it. I remember in a very sleep deprived state putting a post out once. I think it was Roberto Semprini. That name's just popped into my head. And he was either last or very, very close to the last runner over the line. And I threw in this sentence just saying that nobody actually loses the Spine race. People just sometimes take longer to win. And, you know, I wrote it before I really had the thought, if you get what I mean. It sort of came out fully formed. And I was like, yeah, that is how I feel about these guys. You know, there's the people that win, you know, that are quick. And that's great and that's really exciting. But the people that tough it out and scrape in at 159 and a half hours and had to give every ounce of everything that they had to get there. I'll go out there and say it. I am more impressed and more moved by that quite often than I am by, you know, Damo being on the podium again or whatever else. I don't know why I picked on Damien there. I am sorry if you're listening to this, bud, but you get what I mean. I thrive there. I love that. And I love that we will just continue telling those stories and putting out as much coverage as we possibly can. We keep our foot down and keep pushing right the way until the last person has come in. And that doesn't just go for the media team, that goes for everybody involved. Like it's not done until it's done. And everybody gets the same treatment if at all humanly possible. Yeah.
That is one of the things that makes the race so magical for everyone, isn't it? That special treatment. And you know, I've been on both sides of it. I've been on the media team. I've been on the checkpoint team, and I've been, and I've ran the race as well. I've ran,
Yeah.
most of the races. It's just the Challenge South I've not done. So, and I know I can vouch for that, and I think there's an appetite there for the people absolutely love the coverage, and every year that they always say every year people are always commenting, aren't they, like, oh, it's even better this year, it's even better this year, like the coverage. So yeah,
Oh man.
so I'm looking forward to our little chat after we've finished recording about my ideas for some media stuff.
Yeah, you're right. We need to chat about January, but no, thanks, man. I I'm not great at taking compliments or at giving myself many either. Like I hold myself up to a stupidly high standard for someone as scatterbrained as I am. But yeah, I'm proud of what we do on the spine race, and I love doing it, and I will keep doing it until Phil is absolutely sick of me. Which hopefully won't happen. I love Phil.
Hopefully not this year.
No.
Awesome.
I'll be
Well,
there in January. Like, that's happening.
whether he likes it or not.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you coming on and chatting and sort of giving a bit more sort of backstory for, obviously my listeners know who you are already, but it's great to sort of fill in those gaps. And I didn't even realize that you had a bungee jumping era. That's new
Yeah.
information for people.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and there was, budding rock star Will, pretentious barista Will for a while, boring office Will for a couple of years. Yeah, there's yeah, like a crap David Bowie. Just keep changing every few years. But I think where I am now is going to stick.
Yeah, awesome. Right. Don't go changing.
No,
Awesome.
well,
Thanks, mate.
thanks. No, thank you. Always a pleasure to wang on about the spine and the other stuff I do. So thank you, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's always time to wang on about the spine, although my listeners might disagree. I told them in the intro anyway before we started recording. I did a little quick record, and I just said, if we are talking about Will's career as a photographer and content creator, but we will talk about the spine. So if you're sick of me talking about the spine, you need to turn off now. So they won't be listening.
All right. Well, I hope I threw in enough variety for those people, but yeah, I'm going to talk about the spine race. Can't help it.
It wouldn't be spine bingo without mentioning the spine.
Yeah, there you go.
Cheers, mate. I'll look forward to chatting with you in a moment after we finished recording. So bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.
Thanks very much.